Very good morning. Happy Tuesday. How are things? It's OTB AM. I'm delighted to have you with us as we do every weekday morning between now and 10 AM. OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night edition available now. A stacked studio once again this morning. We've got Cork, we've got Galway, we've got Sligo. All from the coast actually. Colm Boohig, good morning.
Morning, Shane.
Johnny Ward, good morning.
Morning, Shane.
Kathleen, McNamee, good morning.
Morning.
These are all from coastal counties, I just realised.
Yeah. Feel sad about that, Shane?
I just feel left out. Monaghan's one of those forgotten inland counties. Is it Laois that's the doubly landlocked? The only doubly landlocked county. Doesn't touch a county that even that touches the sea. Fun fact, guys, this morning. Table, if it comes up in the table quiz, just go right down Laois. Pretty sure it's Laois that's the only doubly landlocked.
Definitely Google it before.
Definitely Google it first.
That Shane is giving you correct information.
Exactly. Do any of you actually grew up near the sea?
I'm basically from the Midlands, even though I'm from Galway,
right.
Closer to Athlone than Roscommon than Salt Hill. Short drive.
Yeah.
I live right on the beach.
Your screen.
Yeah, our house overlooks the dunes onto the beach.
That's Ochra's Head is close to there.
Yeah, exactly. Beach bar.
I've never been to the beach bar, but that's on my list for this summer.
10 out of 10. You can see the Slieve League cliffs as well across the water, especially on a clear day. It's absolutely gorgeous. And you got Knocknarea, Benbulben, the whole thing in front of you.
Benbulben around the right hand corner. Right hand corner.
It's a pretty sweet place to grow up, I have to say.
Do you ever get bored of the sea?
Never.
Yeah.
No. My favourite thing to do whenever I'm home is hop on my bike, cycle down. So you can't actually walk to the beach across the back of the dunes from our house because there's a river in between that you can't get through because there's just loads of gorse and stuff. So I'd cycle around. It's a mile and hop in the sea, quick swim, walk the beach, cycle home. Happy days.
Sounds lovely.
I would love to live by the sea. That's my
changes your mindset, doesn't it?
It does. Just access to water as well. You can just have a dip in at any given moment.
An endless possibility.
It doesn't matter what sort of mood you're in. Even if it's a terrible day and you can't get in for a swim, say the water's too choppy or whatever, you just go down, sit in the car, watch the waves for a bit of a while.
Were sea swims a big thing before COVID? Yeah.
Not really. It was a COVID thing. It
was it would have been in coastal areas. My mum is part of a swim tribe and has been for years, and it's just a group of women. Some mornings it could be 20 of them, some mornings it could be 2, and they all just meet at a certain time every single morning and go for a swim and have done for the last decade. And it was amazing
because it became this thing in Ireland that I'd say Ireland was one of the few countries in the world where people would even countenance in any sort of big numbers getting into swim in say February.
Yeah.
Where it is cold, but it's manageable, and the colder it is, the better you feel after it. I think if you can get over the shiver, it's amazingly good for your health, mental health.
We don't eat fish enough.
No, not at all.
An island country.
No, it's scandalously
water kind of adds a bit of pizzazz to your thinking when you're walking.
Makes you feel.
If you have an important life decision to make, go out for a walk. I think it's vital that water's there.
The water.
Yeah, you kind of look on into the distance and make your big decision.
Get philosophical,
bit of Hollywood to it,
Well, it's the timelessness of it as well. That water has been coming in and out of that shore just for long before you were there.
You'd almost call it relentless. Now, speaking of pizzazz, Succession.
Oh, sorry, we have to warn people about this. Yeah,
I watched it last night.
The finale.
And I just want to warn everyone that we are going to go ahead with the Succession finale recap tomorrow live on the show.
The office hasn't actually seen it yet.
Correct. We're given, I think, with fair warning, 3 days out from when it's live on TV. And so we're going to do it on tomorrow morning's show. We're going to talk about Succession finale. We'll give you loads of warning to walk away.
I watched episode 4 of the last season last night, so I have 6 episodes to go.
So you're out.
I'm going to have to step aside tomorrow.
I'm similar, yeah. I'm a little behind, yeah.
We'll have a very special guest from the OTB Annals of History. The great Sue Murphy will be in studio.
I thought you were going to say Brian Cox or Jerry.
Yeah, the way you built that up.
Wrong there, yeah. You really set that one up.
Yeah. Brian Cox says you had to be there.
Kieran Culkin live in studio. No.
In the words of Logan Roy.
Yeah. F off. What's his best quote?
Yeah.
There's a few good Logan Roy. So that's a fair warning to people.
Yeah. It'll be on tomorrow's show and they're in the middle of the show.
Congratulations on your defeat Saturday though, Shane. That was...
Yeah, it was tough.
I forgot to ask you because we were in Friday and it came into my mind last night, yeah.
It was tough. Anytime you lose a final is difficult. I would have put myself in the red in the performance rankings, but there wasn't enough room.
Right.
So Thankfully, there wasn't enough for him.
Just an off day.
Just an off day for us. Yeah. You have those, I suppose.
Yeah.
We've got a mix of youth and experience. We'll be back next year. Also, commiserations to my housemate, who's a big Boston Celtics fan. Very, very tough night for them last night. They came back from 3-0 down against the Heat, Miami Heat, only to lose 4-3 in Game 7 last night. So it's the Miami Heat that progressed to play the Denver Nuggets in the NBA playoff finals. So that's going to be fascinating. We'll probably touch on that, I'd say, later in the week or early next week. Certainly.
We'll do something on that.
We'll do something on that for sure. Because I know a lot of Irish people are interested, despite it being in the middle of the night.
A lot.
It's tough to watch it, you see. I'd love to watch it, only for the obviously our Irish don't.
Do you think The Last Dance has played a big part in that?
Yeah.
I always felt there was actually a very sizable minority, huge interest in basketball in Ireland.
Yeah, for sure. I think it just needs more, as Kieran Downey said to us recently, it needs more bums on seats at Irish basketball matches too.
You would think basketball would be huge in this country considering the weather.
Yeah.
They're going to be affected, like.
It should be,
big in the likes of Castle Island and parts of Kerry. Is it becoming more watchable than Gaelic football, is a question? Because I think Maurice Brosnan's article in the Examiner today speaks about just the Roscommon possession game. Martin Bradley actually touched on a very similar, pretty much the same thing when Roscommon beat Mayo in the Connacht Championship, that Davy Burke has a possession style. I do wonder now, I've been watching some Gaelic football, and Joe Brawley and Mick Foley have spoken about recent games in Ulster that are basically really boring into the last 10 minutes. But is it time to think about like a stop clock, basically, that you can only have possession for so long?
Shot like basketball,
yeah, like it's just something. I think Gaelic football has the mark and stuff. It has brought in changes in recent years to try and promote kick passing and all that, but it's becoming a bit like a bad soccer game at times, where people just they just develop into conversations among the crowd because it's not, they know nothing's really happening. It's an interesting one. I know a lot of people are really struggling to watch Gaelic football right now. This is nothing new, obviously, but it's not getting better. It's interesting. You thought Monaghan Derry was all right. I only saw the report now. Mick Foley said it was an awful game of football.
See, as we said before the show, you probably are a bit coloured when your county is involved, and it's an exciting game. Exciting as in a point or two in it, and it could go either way at the end. Maybe on quality it wasn't fantastic, and then Monaghan get a black card in the second half, and the usual thing happens where the team with black card tries to slow things down a bit and get their injuries or whatever. Not saying the Monaghan players weren't injured, but that happens, and that's a tactic that you have to use, because if the clock doesn't stop when you're down for an injury, why wouldn't you do that,
Do you think that it is at an all-time low in terms of a watching fest at the moment, Gaelic football?
No, but see, the funny thing is, if you watch, say, like there was a great documentary on, I don't know if you saw it last night, on Kevin Moore on RT. Kevin Brannigan's it's well worth watching. But like you compare football then to now, like it's a completely different game, but like it's actually a better game now. It's just a lot more tactical. Do you know what I mean?
I have to say I thoroughly enjoyed the Gaelic football at the weekend generally. Like I watched Armagh Westmeath, and again, quality not fantastic, but it was exciting. Like Maurice Brosnan had a stat on that Roscommon thing. So on 31 minutes and 24 seconds, Conor Carroll, the Roscommon keeper, taps the kick out to Brian Stack, and they keep the ball, so that's 31 and a half minutes. They keep the ball to just over 37 minutes when Kieran Murda shoots and scores, and in that 6 minutes, nearly 6 minutes, 77 passes, 31 of them were kicked, and Conor Carroll, the keeper, had 19 possessions in that play.
That could easily be changed. You can't pass back to the goalkeeper for one thing.
But I don't mind that. Some people think that's horrendous. I actually think that's tactical.
6 minutes of possession.
That's beating Dublin at Dublin's game.
So Dublin have to figure a way of getting the ball back.
So this is not a conversation that comes up like nearly every season when there's like one or two games that are like very heavy possession based and everyone gives off about it, and then the next weekend there's an absolute cracker of a game and everyone just forgets about the argument again until it comes up a couple of weeks. I feel like we've been having this discussion since like Donegal burst onto the scene, basically, and since then every year there's one team who's like ruining Gaelic football, but it's actually very successful tactic for them. I mean, you saw it was successful for Roscommon at the weekend against Dublin. Why wouldn't you play like that? Like, if these teams are actually able to form ways of beating the bigger teams, the bigger clubs, why would you do anything to curtail that? Because it's probably only going to play into the hands of like a Dublin, Mayo, Kerry, whoever it is.
I would have I think for the sake of the referee, like there are things you can look at, right? Once you pass the halfway line, you can't come back. You can't come back from the other opposition half, for one thing. Things like this need to be considered. The goalkeeper rule, like a limit of like maybe a minute having the ball at any one time, something like that. I think you can't take for
like
granted
a player
that,
can only have the ball for a minute.
no, a team. So you can't take for granted. Like, these are just ideas. But like 6 minutes of possession is, by any metric, that's an awful watch for a new.
But was it not on Dublin in that 6 minutes to get the ball?
Maybe they're not that bothered about getting it back.
Like, yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah.
You can choose whether to press or not, because it's very tiring not having the ball. It's far less tiring for a team to have the ball and have possession and dictate it, even though you have the ball and you're still doing a lot of work.
What do you have to do with the ball after a minute?
Or you just cough it up, like if you don't score, you just give the ball back. I'm not suggesting this, but like I think something will probably change. You can't take for granted that people will keep watching Gaelic football in its current guise, because people's attention span is bad, and you can audibly hear people talking throughout large swathes of inter-county All-Ireland Gaelic football games now, and that's not great.
Do you think any rule changes are designed to retain the converted, or to encourage a new mass of fans? Like,
they probably thought that with the mark.
You have a lot of people in the country can't stand football.
Yeah, I think they thought with a number of rules. Oh, this is better. This is an improvement. The mark has not worked at all. So you see the mark being used in not in the way it was intended. Not the high ball in the full forward line. It's or the midfield.
See, if I had a choice between a great Gaelic football match and a great hurling one, I'd probably lean towards football.
Yeah,
if it's great. But I think there's far worse football games than hurling ones. I think hurling's much easier to watch personally. I think you could argue with Gaelic football that too easy is probably the wrong term, but there are too many options that you can do. Like, you can do so much with the ball. There's so many things you can do even to score a point.
This sounds insane.
Parts of your body, you know.
This sounds insane.
That's your body.
We've arrived at a point where there are too many scores in hurling, and football there's not enough happening. And I don't know which. Sometimes I don't really want to watch either. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, hurling, there are too many scores at the moment.
Yeah, but
it's too much like basketball.
I would argue there's far more skill required in hurling than football.
Oh, there absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely is.
I don't know. Can you argue there's too many scores? Like, you watch Limerick at the weekend, and like that game was so tit for tat, up and down, and there was like scores going everywhere, and it was like almost hard to watch because there was so much happening, and you're like, oh, what's the score? Okay, yeah, no, there's only 2 points in it. I thought there was like 3 with the amount of scores that have been happening, and it was class to watch because of the pace and the intensity, and like you felt like you couldn't take a breath watching it because something would have happened.
I find basketball totally boring.
The GA is as much about like the competition and the structures as it is what's actually happening on the pitch. Like, there've been plenty of unreal matches this season, and I don't know how many matches people would necessarily look at and say it was Roscommon Dublin levels of possession base and that's what made it bad. What made the other games bad is the fact that like there was a total difference between the teams that were facing off against each other, and there was a clear winner going into every game before a ball was even kicked. Like, that was the issue with a lot of the games. It wasn't the possession stuff.
Well, ironically, we've had very, very close games in the group stages. A lot of really close games so far. But I don't know. I mean, I know a lot of diehards who've just given up on Gaelic football watching it.
That's the thing. They have been tight games. I actually think the first round of group games have been good.
They have been good.
I thought they'd be dead rubbers, but they actually you forget how important it is to maybe top the group and avoid that extra game and get them a little bit more of bit of rest straight through to the quarterfinals. So I think there's more jeopardy on the line than
Was there a sweet spot for football in your lifetime? I put that in the room.
2000 drawn All Ireland, Galway Kerry sitting in the judge's lap.
Yeah,
I mean a season or maybe a year or two.
In terms of the quality of football,
and the rules as well, and the approach to it in games. Are they trying to change too much?
I thoroughly enjoyed like the mid-noughties, the Kerry Tyrone days. Probably the best, I think. Maybe that's just my age, but I don't mind where football's at the minute. I think definitely there
change
could be rules.
Anything.
Definitely get rid of the advanced mark. Probably encourage more kicking. That's kind of a theme in the comments here this morning as well. They have to change. Brian says they have to change the hand pass rules. Players need to be forced to kick the ball. The mark was a brutal idea. It's just how you encourage them to kick past more. Maybe you need X number of, but then, you know, if you need X number of kicks before you can take a shot, and a team has only taken 3 of their 5 kicks, and they all of a sudden have a shooting opportunity, and they have to turn back. Everyone's like, this is stupid.
Why have you an issue with the back pass being brought in? What's the advantage of passing back to the goalie in terms of a spectacle?
Well, certainly not in terms of a spectacle, but
like, should we also be looking at sport in terms of a spectacle?
Well, that's the thing, it's a sport.
But football brought it in, and it's much better for it. Like, much better for it. as in soccer. It brought in the back pass rule. I remember I was told about when I was like under 12 or something. It's a much better game. What is the benefit as a spectacle, which is important because Gaelic football is not a good spectacle for much of the time for a lot of people. What is the benefit of the goalkeeper being able to get the ball again and have 19 possessions in 6 minutes?
Yeah,
I don't want to watch that.
But 31 of those 77 passes were kicked at least. Roscommon.
That could be kicked 2 yards,
yeah.
Or kick to a fella who was in loads of space. I don't really see the negative of bringing in the back pass rule.
I don't know. I just it'd be drastic. I think
it wouldn't be drastic. You just don't pass back to goalie. Pass back to one of the other 14 players.
I think referees at the minute in Gaelic football have way too much to be doing.
You said about hurling.
Yeah.
Same as hurling. But there should definitely be 2 referees in hurling for sure. That's a no-brainer. I know it's going to be difficult to have that at club level, volunteers and all the rest, but certainly at county level there has to be 2 referees.
I have to say there are a few sports worse as a neutral. If you're watching a Gaelic football game and one side is 8 points clear with 10 minutes to go and they try to keep the ball and they're hand passing to each other, it's almost pointless to watch it.
Yeah,
I mean, it's impressive, the retention of the ball and their composure. And
it's one for the purists.
Yeah, their lack of urgency. It's an impressive way to run down the clock. But then you think to yourself, Jesus, what's this all about?
This is the
what
thing.
Are we here for?
So when I was at I love bringing things back to snooker, but when I was at the Crucible recently, there was a match on between Gary Wilson and Mark Selby, and it was, if you weren't a snooker fan, this was putrid stuff.
There's examples of it in every sport, but I think Gaelic football is one of the worst.
But snooker purists love that for him, and the players were nearly apologising after it, but purists loved it because it was so torturous. And same with Gaelic football probably.
I don't think that's a thing in hurling. For example, I don't think there is such a thing as maybe retaining possession in hurling is really not done. There's far more passing in hurling now than there used to be. Used to be you just up the field and that would be a roar. And now
what
you're
is the Gaelic football purist though? Does the Gaelic football purist marvel at 6 minute long possession, or is the Gaelic football purist wants to see the Galway team of '98 or that's that era where football was just it was a simpler game. It's a better game now clearly because it's evolved. It's just less watchable.
Well, if you're a purist, you probably enjoy every aspect of the game.
You don't enjoy hand passing the ball for 6 minutes.
You might like the chess nature of it.
Yeah, and it also depends on if your team is playing and if they're if you're a Roscommon supporter and you're doing that against Dublin at the weekend and it's getting you results and it gets you a draw, which sets you up very well going into the rest of the group stage. Of course you're going to enjoy. You might not enjoy it, but you're going to enjoy the result out of it in the moment. So you're not going to sit there and be like, oh God, I wish Davy Burke hadn't done that. We should have been playing the ball a bit more. You're going to be like, no, that was a successful tactic for us, fair play. How can we use that later on, presuming they get out of the group?
Yeah, some of the comments on this are interesting.
We weren't even supposed to be talking about Gaelic football today. It wasn't on the show.
No, we did. We put it to the top at the start.
Did we?
Yeah, we did just before we went live.
So we don't have a guest on today. Fergus Keogh says, as with rugby, too many people want to turn football into basketball with a score every other minute. Danny Mack says, what kind of a Cork man is Colm watching football before hurling? But football
I did say
Cork's a split county, isn't it?
Yeah, well, first of all, it was
dual county.
But hurling would definitely be stronger. But I did say when I said that if it's a choice between 2 great matches, one football, one hurling, I'd probably lean towards football, but I'd watch way more hurling overall.
Right.
Because hurling is consistently, for me, more entertaining than football. And I also saw a comment that there are too many scores in hurling. I don't really buy into that as a bad thing. I admire the accuracy, the increase. I think it's incredible to watch.
Yeah. I think Limerick missed 4 at the start of the game on Sunday, and you were like, "Wow, this is going to be a ridiculously low-scoring game," and then it was ridiculously high.
But that point about the misses, that's why I think it adds a bit of jeopardy because sometimes they do miss. And I think the skill level is at an all-time high. It's incredible. It's insane, yeah. It's absolutely amazing.
In the next 5-10 years, the skill level is going to get to the point where the shooting accuracy is just an outrageous level.
Why are we criticising that?
No, but I mean, I guess it's a shootout.
No, I think the only problem with that is it's almost alienating to the audience because it's how could I ever do that? Replicate it?
Maybe. Yeah.
The skill level is just so high.
But I feel for the commentator because Darren Maloney can't keep saying that's a great score. He's had 60 points in this game. They can't all be great. And it's tough for the commentator because he's not a hurler. Now hurlers just say, well, that's actually a run-of-the-mill score. It's just one of 136 to 227 today.
That's the thing.
That's between Westmeath and Antrim, by the way.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying like hurling's in an amazing place, but I do find like the score has lost its value because there's so many scores in the game. It's entirely different to the Gaelic football conversation.
100%.
But that's because of the improvement of the sport. Like, like pundits are becoming blasé about moments of magic.
Yeah.
How can we ever get to that place?
I'd agree with that, yeah.
We use too many words of praise in football. I think, oh, what a fantastic! Like, it's lost meaning at this point.
No, but when you see a great goal scored in Gaelic football, it's nothing like it as well.
Yeah, it's true.
But a truly great goal.
Francie Brady says Gaelic football must be the worst field game to watch at this point. It's become unbearable. Dwayne Griffin, this is a good point. Why is possession seen as such a great thing to watch in soccer but not Gaelic football?
Far more difficult to retain the ball in soccer than Gaelic football. Goes back to my point.
True,
you have too many options in Gaelic football.
Yeah,
there's so many ways. And also tackling in Gaelic football, it's really tough to get the ball back.
Yeah,
it's really hard. Like, that's why Paul Galvin stood out so much for his trick to like smack the ball out of someone's hand. You know, like soccer it's really tough to keep hold of the ball in soccer.
Yeah, it is. No, it is.
It is. That's why like the really good teams are amazing at it.
It's an interesting talking point though, because like some people at the minute are quite happy with Gaelic football, and you talk to other people who are like, I can't watch it. It's putrid at the moment. So it definitely divides opinion.
I find it fascinating, but as a neutral, I don't find it fascinating for a team to have the ball for 6 minutes. Really, it's just hard to enjoy them because they're literally killing the clock.
Yeah,
like the longer we have the ball and the longer that Dublin don't have the ball, the longer this is a non-event. Essentially, we don't really have an interest necessarily in scoring here. We just have an interest in making this game as unwatchable as possible. Really, that's what it is, because it cuts out this as junk time. And that's not to say there is a bit of effort keeping the ball, but not that much at times.
I might get you on this, Johnny. We could transition into our next topic here, but Chris in the live comments says, watch the League of Ireland game and tell me GA is boring to watch. Did you see last Friday's games?
I didn't actually. No, I heard the Bows Shells game was very poor, which ironically a lot has to do with Damien Duff's strategy with Shells. But I think it's subjective as well. I mean, a lot of people will watch League of Ireland and think it's crap. But in fairness, I think it's been very, very watchable in recent years. We've had a couple of bad games of late.
Brings us nicely to the next topic, and it's one that is a little bit concerning, because you think of years ago, a couple of decades ago, less even, the amount of Irish players playing in the Premier League at that level, and the stats for this season just gone, 2022 to 23 season, the Premier League, 13 Irish players played in the Premier League season, total of 9,320 minutes. That's down from 14 players and down 620 minutes from the previous season, so it's a new low in terms of Irish talent playing at the top level.
Stats are from Philip Quinn in today's Irish Daily Mail.
Right, that's concerning, isn't it?
And also Philip goes on to compare it to even 10 years ago, far more. And then the first season in the Premier League, it was like nearly 9,500 minutes. There was like 45,000 minutes. Like, it's just because the market's opened up, you can scout all over the world. Suddenly Irish players aren't so attractive.
I don't think it's not like it's a historical outlier, but it's not an outlier at all now, in terms of no Irish managers hardly at all in English football anymore, like really a handful. It's very, very hard for the Irish players, considering our ranking, to make an imprint in the Premier League, which, as Colm says, is, I mean, look at the managers in the Premier League, like the level of, like, Ancelotti's last job in England was managing Everton, like, you know, like the managerial talent is so strong. There's incredible money in it, and for Irish players to get in, I think we're going to have to improve, but I don't really think it's that big of a deal, to be honest. I think that's where we're at. We're a small country. We have a lot of players playing at the Championship, which is Championship's one of the top 10 leagues in the world. We have a lot of players playing there.
I was going to say, I'd be curious to see what the figures were for like Championship or say lower leagues as well. Like, have they gone up or increased, or like what's the historical tracking of those over the last couple of seasons? Like, are we suffering there in the same way the Premier League? Is that a complete downward trend throughout the leagues in England, or is it just that kind of higher echelon?
Yeah, I mean, the closest Irish Premier League manager we're going to have soon is probably Paddy McCarthy of Crystal Palace. If Roy Hodgson does maybe another year, and then up steps McCarthy from the wings. But yeah, it's not looking good there. I mean, I do think it's a bit concerning, because the Premier League is obsessed over in Ireland. It's also and to not have players. I mean, like the player who played by far the most this season is Gavin Bazunu, who got relegated with Southampton. And if it wasn't for Evan Ferguson, this would really be an nadir. Yeah, Ferguson is and like Ferguson scored, was it 6 league goals and made his debut on St. Stephen's Day, and got injured as well. Yeah. He didn't play that much really overall, but he was just so impressive when he did play. And then after that, like the list quickly diminishes. Like Seamus Coleman again got injured. He's out of contract. Don't know if he's going to play for Everton. Look, the bright point, Burnley and Sheffield United are in the Premier League next season. There you have John Egan, Enda Stevens, Josh Cullen. provided they stay and play. So that would be improved upon. But
you're like, we should not be
great.
obsessed with essentially the only league that is not in the EU as well. Like, so we can't even send players over until they're 18 now. The link between the two countries, which has obviously gone back 800 years, is being broken up a little bit because of Brexit, and we are now necessarily sending young players to other leagues, and the obsession with English football hasn't been healthy for this country either. And we shouldn't be that worried that the Premier League, that the numbers are pretty much what they should be, considering like Ireland haven't been great for a long time. I think we're working on it. I'd be more encouraged by how the under-17s performed in defeat against Spain, the numbers of Irish players in England. I really would, like, and I think the fascination and the obsession with England like hasn't been a good thing for us at all. Where we felt it was okay just to send kids over at any age under the sun and wish them the best of luck, and they came back with their tails between their legs and were, you know, unable to make it as footballers because of the English machine. But we didn't have anything to offer them in Ireland. That's what we should look at. Focus on our own game. Why does Damien Duff wants to maybe manage Ireland, but other than that he's happy to manage the League of Ireland because he sees the potential of it, and if he sees it, maybe the rest of us should see it as well. Like,
well, we were having exactly this conversation last night on the Boohig podcast, which is in your feeds now if you want to listen to it, but in relation to the WSL and the fact that 4 Irish players are out of contract at the moment. Possible out of them, maybe 1 is going to play in the WSL next season. The rest will probably all go down to the Championship. Obviously, Grace Maloney has also been relegated with Reading. And Emma Byrne was making exactly the point that you're making there, Johnny, of like, we have this obsession with sending young players to England. She's like, why not if they want to go and play abroad, like if they want to have that chance outside of the leagues in Ireland, why not send them to Spain? Like, why not send them to Italy? Why not get them to have some experience in France? Why do we always need to obsess over whether our players are in the WSL or the Premier League? Like, we were talking about both leagues. She was like, there are so many great leagues across Europe that our players could benefit from, but we seem to have been like very blinkered over. And I know it's like history and it's closer, and for a long time it was a lot easier to get to England, and it seemed, you know, it's not as much of a culture shock as it may be going to somewhere else. But why are we so focused on having our players in the English league and not somewhere else where and if they come back, you know, if someone plays in Spain for 3 years and comes back, they're going to play an entirely different set of football, and it's going to be only a benefit then for, say, national teams that they may be playing in, whether that's underage, whether that's at senior level. We see it with Amber Barrett, the fact that she's played in Germany for so long, like, she comes back and she has a totally different style of football to any of the players that play in the WSL. We see it with the ones like Heather Payne, who plays over in the States, or Denise O'Sullivan. They come back and they offer something completely different to us. So why focus so much on the English side of things? Why?
That's an interesting point. That you, like, so we discussed how the Irish, so what is it, 13 Irish players in the Premier League last year, and our international team, as you say, isn't at the heights that it once was, but the women's team is in the World Cup, and yet the numbers don't seem that different. Like, are there more than 13 Irish players in the WSL?
It's the impact. Far more impact on WSL than the Premier League. Like the Irish players in the Premier League, the 13 are largely peripheral outside of the 3 that I mentioned.
But also what you're seeing now with the WSL is like there is that drain happening where more and more of our players are landing in the Championship than ever before, whereas before we would have had, you know, like obviously we have Katie McCabe, big name, one of the best players in the WSL, but apart from that, the majority of our players are playing for Championship teams, and it looks like they're going to continue that way rather than making the sort of impact that they have done in the WSL. And that's because of the same way it went with the Premier League, being able to scout further afield, being able to bring more money coming into the league, and Irish girls and women just not being able to compete in the same way that they maybe did before when there was less choice and opportunity, which is why, like, I think this is an important discussion to be having now, especially for like the FAI and stuff, thinking, well, like, okay, if we are going to keep producing talents like Katie McCabe, Denise O'Sullivan, Heather Payne, whoever it is, what can we be doing to make sure that continues, whether it's increasing the league here, whether it's like building opportunities with, you know, academies in mainland Europe or with colleges in the States. Like, that's where we need to be looking now at all those opportunities, so that, say, 10 years, 20 years down the line, because obviously the men's game is more advanced at the moment in terms of the development, we're not looking at the Premier League or the WSL and thinking, oh God, we used to have so many top players and now we have like Bazunu, who's played the most amount of minutes and is being relegated, or Kelleher, who comes on and lets 4 goals in.
Sorry, lads. I think a good example is if you brought anyone along to see Patrick McElhinney, Jack Byrne or Graham Burke play in the League of Ireland, or see what they've done in European football, see McElhinney's goals, see what Jack Byrne has done, see some of Graham Burke's goals. The three of them were effectively flops in Britain, right? I mean, McElhinney and Jack Byrne ended up at Oldham, right? And they weren't really doing much. Oldham was a basket case. Graham Burke went to Preston. I remember Shawnee Maguire telling me Graham Burke is the best player in training. Didn't really work out from there. They're all happy to be playing in Ireland. They generally are. And we should be really, really proud of the quality that we have in the League of Ireland, the technical quality. Jack Byrne's best spell of football was in Holland. It wasn't in England because he was more suited to it. And we've this obsession with the English game. And I'm not saying English football is bad to watch, but like as you go down the leagues, you know, a lot of these Irish players they would be better playing, as Kathleen alludes to there, in other countries. And because of we have a lot of dual nationality potential players now coming through with like maybe African heritage, or in some cases like Albanian heritage, stuff like that, where they would be probably, those kids would probably more inclined to maybe move to a non-English speaking country because culturally it's not that different to them as well. And this is a good thing, and Brexit has brought all this about, and I'm delighted it has, because it's forced us to look after our own, and it might force the government into actually helping us for once.
No, that's all great, and I agree with it, but I think the reason we're talking about the Premier League and WSL is that they're two elite leagues, right? So we as a nation have massive ambitions for our national sides.
Yeah.
So you often hear the criticism of Vera Pauw's team is that the football isn't great, but it can be very effective. But like the possession stats aren't great, but can't really keep the ball that well. Probably the opposite is labelled at Stephen Kenny largely, is that the football's okay, results aren't good. So it all goes back to our players on both sides. Not enough of them are playing at the absolute top level of the game. So the Premier League and WSL is just an example of two leagues that they could be playing in. Of course we're going to mention the Premier League. It's the one that we follow the most. That's the one we talk about the most.
Yeah.
So if our players at the top level aren't playing in those leagues enough, and we have this huge ambition, which I think is out of proportion for what we are as a nation, on both the men's and women's side, to be really high achieving football sides, because we're a football obsessed country. It is concerning that they're not playing.
But that's also like, I get what you're saying, but I think it's also slightly to the side of what Johnny and I are saying, in the sense that there's a certain like obviously Premier League, greatest league in the world, but when you look at the teams Irish players could be playing for, you know, like Katie McCabe could go play for Lyon and she would be as successful as she is at Arsenal. Like there are Premier League players that, say Irish players who are playing the Premier League right now, who could go to another league, whether it's like the Eredivisie or La Liga or something, and do really well there. And it's not the fact, like, and I know people will say, okay, well that's not the same level as the Premier League, but if they're successful there, if it suits their style of football, if they're playing the best they can play, that is beneficial for the Irish national teams. And like, I think sometimes there's like a snobbery sometimes that comes with the Premier League, and I'm not saying, Colm, that you're being a snob in the argument that you're making. I'm just saying there's a snobbery sometimes that comes with the Premier League. Like if you're playing in the bottom 6 teams of the Premier League, and you could be playing in the top 4 of a slightly lower league, or say like the top half of a slightly lower league, and doing well and winning trophies and being successful, surely that's as beneficial as Bazunu in Southampton. Again, he's a very easy option now, but you know what I mean? Or like even Coleman at Everton.
That's what I'm saying, but like the Eredivisie is a good example. That's just as good. The Premier League and WSL are 2 examples, not the leagues that you have to play in. There's not enough players playing at the elite level of the game.
Yeah,
and I think also
players,
if you're bottom 4 in the Premier League, that's no problem, like, because you're playing against quality every single week. Like if a player plays abroad at a top level club, like in one of the European Central Leagues, that's fantastic.
But are you damaging your?
But the problem is there's too many championship players.
Yeah.
For the ambition that we have as a nation, we're never going to be happy. Like, because how many times do we debrief a Republic of Ireland game, either Vera Pauw or Stephen Kenny's side, and we're highly critical of it the next day because we're out of proportion with the reality of where our players are playing. So it is concerning.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I do think the obsession with going to England has definitely calmed down.
It's an example. It's not the be all and end all. It's an example of what we talk about every day.
Yeah. And
there's not enough Irish players there. But if an Irish player is playing anywhere in Europe, brilliant, as long as it's top level. Not enough top level players.
I'd love to see more Irish players in the Bundesliga or the Eredivisie.
Brilliant, I was all about it.
But that will happen. You see examples of that, like the kids going off to Udinese, Banqua and Festi, obviously. And also just the whole Brexit thing should encourage. We've seen like French clubs buy players. Like Pat's player went to France at a young age, and it should encourage Brexit should encourage EU countries to look into this as potential. Because say Mason Mealy now, who's like, what is he? He's under 17.
He's 15 years of age, isn't he?
Next year, yeah, he's still under 17 next year. So, as far as I know, his parentage is entirely Irish. But there'll be a lot of kids of his age who will be, attracting the interest of clubs in Europe.
Yeah.
Who can't go to Britain until they're 18, which is absolutely great as far as I'm concerned, because we have to develop them here.
Yeah, let's turn things on its head. 8:04 AM on this Tuesday morning's OTB AM. I just want to briefly mention what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock this morning. We have Alan Quinlan standing by very shortly to reflect on Munster's win at the weekend in South Africa. He was there. Jasmine Baba at 8:25 AM talking Borussia Dortmund, and they really, I'm not going to say bottled the Bundesliga, but
they bottled
they bottled it. Let's say bottled. Go on, Colm, we'll use that word. The draw with Mainz at home was just
they lost.
They lost, and Bayern get the did they lose?
Yeah,
they lost.
They lost 2-1. They hadn't lost at home since the 20th of August,
Bayern,
and they lose to Mainz, who were useless.
Yeah, but like it's one of those moments in you're just like, these lads. No, Dortmund drew at home in the last game, did they not?
I think they lost 2-1. Either way, they battled it.
Yeah. Well, someone let us know in the comments. But either way, that's going to be discussed with Jasmine Baba. And
2-2 draw.
All right, sorry.
Jasmine
Apologies,
Baba,
but they lost it.
football analyst. She's joined us different times before talking about Borussia Dortmund, and Jude Bellingham will be part of that conversation as well. Sports news at 8:40. We'll have Eddie Dunbar at 8:50. Really looking forward to that chat. He had a brilliant Giro d'Italia over the last number of weeks, and top 10 finish, which he was targeting as well. And Dervin O'Rourke at 9:10 talking Rashida Adeleke amongst other things. But now it's 9:05. 8:05. I'm an hour ahead of myself here.
Dying to go.
I know, listen to me. I should mention Braeburn Coffee, as you see there, is the official coffee partner of OTB. Braeburn Coffee is coming to an Applegreen near you. New Braeburn locations popping up every month, so visit applegreenstores.com/Braeburn to find your nearest Braeburn Coffee experience.